Okay, so we're holding the end of Siman Tzadik Vov, the Halacha Basar בחלב, the last seif. Just to recap a little bit of what we've done before, in the previous halachas, we spoke about various scenarios that involve pressures of the sakin and of the meducha in conjunction with the davar chorev. And apparently, whether it's a meducha or a sakin, it causes or brings about the same kind of a result. That the davar chorev draws the blias, or if you hold like the other shittas, at least the shamnunus, which is be'ein and the sakin, could be a problem in drawing it into the davar chorev. Which means that since that davar chorev absorbed within it the tam of basar, one would not be allowed to cook that, use it with milk. However, if it were to be something that is not a davar chorev, what is understood from that? That we wouldn't have the problem, supposedly, right? So therefore we had a diuk. The Mechaber says earlier on that this halacha that we're talking about here only relates to dvarim charifim and similar dvarim charifim, where they can pose a problem. But it is understood so far, and that's what we're going to see today, that if it's not a davar chorev at all, in other words, if everybody's in agreement that it's not a davar chorev, then you would not have this problem of beliyas. You would not have a problem of lechatchila, perhaps eating it with melicheks. It only concerns dvarim charifim, which means basically that using a fleishik, a knife, in a situation where everything is cold and what you were cutting is not a davar chorev, should be lechatchila permissible, and you can cut a piece of bread with a fleishik, a knife, and eat that bread and put cottage cheese on it, or cream cheese on it. Lechor, that should not be any problem with that, as long as you know for sure that the sakin is clean. As we've seen before, in various halachas, that even though basar b'chalav is, of course, is a very serious isser, when the two are cold, and they're sitting next to each other, the most you may ever need is hadacha. And sometimes we're not even concerned. The only concern, of them being in close proximity. The only time we're really concerned is, of course, eating at the same table. We don't want someone to come by mistake in the two of them. So one wants to eat pizza and the other one wants to have a steak using the same table. You want them to be, of course, at the other end, each one at the other end of the table. You want to have things separating between the two of them. That is, of course, when the issue of mixture is a possibility. But other than that, the sakin, as sharp as it may be, if there's no heat involved, there's no transfer of tam when you're dealing with something cold. However, there are times that the goyim may have used their knives for davar isur, not basar b'chalav now. And the question is a davar isur any different than basar b'chalav? Because in basar b'chalav we said we have the advantage of heterobola. And once you have the advantage of heterobola, you can always also rely on the not barnat concept. And not barnat is helpful, because even if there is basar, or even if there is chalav, that may be transferred. By the time it is transferred, it has become so niklash that it's not a real tam. So we have used the concept of not barnat several times. There's some machlokes between Mechaber and Ramah as to when to be machmer, under what circumstances do we say not barnat, and so forth. But everybody's pretty much in agreement that by isuro you don't say not barnat. Okay, if that's the case, then a goy that uses his knife to cut something that is sharp, like lemons, and we don't have the advantage of not barnat, would that be mutter if it's cold? Lechatchila we're talking about now. No, one lemon. A single lemon. Okay? What would you say? Well, since a lemon is most likely on par, I guess, with other things that are dvarim charifim, according to the Mechaber, right? That it's not only tznon, but it's batzal, krishim, onions. So all those things that are sharp would have the same halacha or similar problem as radishes do. And if that's the case, if it's a davar asur, then of course I won't be able to eat that lemon. No way. How about if I remove a little bit from it? Well, that's the Ramah that we saw before. Some say, of course, it's asas kedei netila, this combination of sakin and davar charev. But there is a Rashba that says that no, it's oiser chulon. And as the Ramah brings it down, v'yeshem shimchotach tznon b'sakin shel isur kula asur. In other words, by isur they're more machmer than by basar or cholov. And that's how he holds the halacha l'maisa, at least lechatchila. The diavad, he says, ein lesser ra kedei netila. So therefore, if he were to cut for you a lemon with a sakin shel iser that you know is a sakin shel iser, it would be a problem. You wouldn't be able to have it at all. You shouldn't eat it, right? Forget about cooking it with other things. You can't eat it. It has blias of iser in it. It's cold, okay, but it's a davar charev. But in Siv Dalet, we saw a very interesting scenario, a scenario involving lemonade or lemon juice that the goyim bring. And in order to make lemon juice, they have to cut the lemons, and then they squeeze it. So how do they cut the lemons? Well, it could always be, as we said, that they cut the lemons with special tools, special knives that they only use for fruits and vegetables, and then we have no problem whatsoever. There's no bishul akum here involved. I mean, you're using their services to cut fruits and vegetables, fine. As long as we know that the ingredients are fine, as long as we know that the knives are okay, there's no problem. But there's always the possibility, when we're dealing with knives, that knives are used for tray food too. But what about the knives being eino b'nyoima? That's a famous cloud that we've learned and we've spoken about many, many times. The kelim, stam kelim are eino b'nyoima. And that would help with the goy's kelim too. That's always, in a b'diavad situation, of course, not in a lechatchila situation, we can always rely on that. It's very useful. We don't want to throw away a whole big pot of food if it's not ben yoimo.
So
it's not. Is it treif?
So I've forgotten already. The davar charev is v'chal l'shvach.
Oh, okay. See, I'm taking it step by step.
Sorry.
Yeah, right. We're reviewing. This is a review. So right. So we have this eino ben yoimo, which is a big advantage in many situations. However, in these halachas that we've covered so far, we were told that, as Ilan pointed out, that it's machlil l'shvach. There are times that an eino ben yoma that has been determined to be eino ben yoma according to all the days can actually be like choyse v'nira. It can actually come back and be a real good time. Interesting, no? Something that was stale, something that was pogum, even though it's not the same kind of pugima as something which is like flies and cockroaches and things like that. So davar pogum me'atzmoi. In its essence, it's pogum. Here, it's a different kind of pugima. That apparently there is that possibility that machlil l'shvach, which means it could be restored to its original status of pleasant, I guess, or tasty or edible tam. So because of that, the davar charev is not only in conjunction with the sakin or meducha, is not only powerful enough to draw tam. We have this concern, according to some deis, not according to all. Remember, we have various machlokes in here, that it could actually take something which is an eino ben yoma and make it a ben yoma, and therefore we don't have then the advantage of not bar not and the like. So, by lemons, even if the sakin is eino ben yoma, it wouldn't help. But by many lemons, which is what Siv Dalet is all about, we have the heter of bitul beroiv. Not only do we have the heter of bitul beroiv for the first two, as we said, the other ones later on really are pretty much clean, because the first few lemons accomplished the removal of the tam.
Hagala of lemons.
Hagala of the lemons. So this is an interesting idea, because it will help us understand Sif Hey a little bit on how this could happen, that there are actually some fruits that are able to draw out the tam, and at some point you've made a form of hagala or an itza bekarka through fruit.
It's interesting that because the since we're talking about in here,
right?
One might say, since we don't know that the taste or any taste at all,
right.
We don't know how much. So being machmir, one let the thousandth fruit get the full impact of the taste, because they're able to remove more than just a small fraction.
Right.
But still, you would have the bittul beroiv of lemons amongst each other.
Right.
he actually does say both things.
Yeah, both
He
things.
relies on the assumption the first lemons will involve the...
That's correct. Yeah.
Interesting.
Interesting. Yeah, both. We have two things happening. The first lemons are removing the blias, and the question is how many lemons are needed for that? Well, at least two, they say.
How do you get barov if there's...
So because to make lemon juice, we assume he used 100 lemons. This is a big container. So therefore, even though the first two are asur, because they have the blias in them, how can I have the lemon juice here? Well, he must have used 100 lemons or so. So the one or two are batel beroiv.
If there are two, you need to have a beroiv?
Yeah. Roiv, you don't need 60. No, you don't
We're
need
going
60.
to make juice of Allah.
No. Initially, as they're being cut, it's already a bit before they become juice. Yeah. Anyway, the same apply. Right. Sure.
We're saying that sharpness
Yeah.
can pull on the knife.
Right.
So then if you are...
Oh, right. So that's what Sifei is going to be about. Sifei is going to be about sweet fruit. Only sweet stuff. Not chocolates, but fruits. Yeah, and things like that. Anyway, so Sif Dalet was about lemons and about actually dag maliach. You know, herring and the like that the goyim bring in chaviyos. And we said they were mutter for the similar reasons. They bring a lot of it. And even though some are asur, the Ramah says, right, nizbatlu b'acherim eventually. The tam is removed by the first, and then they are nizbato. And he said, and there are other similar situations with other kinds of things that are cut. You can apply the same reasoning. Okay. He adds towards the end that even though there are some people who are machmir and some minhagim to not allow certain things that are cut because perhaps they're chorif or for other reasons, but the things that are not chorif, like apples and so forth, noyagim bahem heter, just like lemons. In other words, what he says towards the end, we understand that this is even a lechatchila, not a b'diavad, which is important. Okay, so Sif Hey. Sif Hey is really a continuation of the Gemara that deals with dogim she'olu be'ke'ara, the idea of not by not over there, hot fish on a Melicha, on a fleishike bowl. Can you eat with milk? So that same Gemara talks about cutting sharp, like snon, like radishes, with a knife. Can you eat those? And we said no, unless of course you take off a natila. According to some, that would be sufficient. So that natila smokam, the mechaber told us, is ke'ovi etzba. So we know that that's more than a klipa. He doesn't use klipa, it says natila. All right. We had the opinion that some say you can taste it. And if that's the case, all you will need is hadacha. And what else did the mechaber tell us there? That as far as he holds like the shitas, the deyas, that this is also true if the sakin is eino ben yomo v'hu mekunach. He says it's v'yesh oimrim, but that's the way he holds. That even if the knife is clean, the halacha would be the same. That a kedei natila may be required. Others who hold, of course, that if the problem is that it's not mekunach. If it would be mekunach, they don't hold that it's strong enough to remove the blias. So it's a question of how you learn the Gemara. Okay, either it's the problem that it's not mekunach, or as we hold lemaisa, that certain things are actually able to draw from the blias. All right. So what did we say? Kedei natila may be required. The continuation of the Gemara says, but what about if you cut something which is sweet? And what's the example of something that's sweet? Kishut. And Kishut Mechaber here calls it Kishuim, cucumbers. Chotach Kishuim besakin shel basar. If you cut with a fleishik knife cucumbers, and cucumbers are not charifim, on the contrary, they're sweet. Comes along the reef, and the Gemara says not only Kishuim but avatiach too, watermelon. Mutar le'ochlom becholav begreida belvad. You want to eat it with milchix? You can. You don't need a kedei natila, but you do need a greida. What's greida? Sheyigror or yigrod mimoko machtach. Basically what the Gemara says, all you need to do is remove a little bit, rub off a little bit of where the sakin cut on into the vegetable. this is obviously less than a netila. Okay? Rubbing it off, greater or greater, there's some say greater, some say greater, it's the same thing. Whether it's with a dalet or with a resh, means to rub off. How much is that rub off? So it's interesting that the Shach over here says, upochus miklipa. Greater is less than a klipa, which is for sure less than a kedei netila. Very little. You just have to rub off a little bit. So the question is, but wait a minute. The Minchas Yaakov asks here, and we spoke about this before in an earlier Siman, the Shach seems to be contradicting himself as to the definition of greater. Here he says it's less than a klipa, and before, in Siman Tzadik Gimel, he says it's like a klipa. Good question. So the Minchas Yaakov's teres is that here it's talking about food, and over there the Shach was talking about the keli. That greater rubbing off from a keli is equivalent to a klipa in a keli. But here it's in food it's less than a klipa. The Premier Godam doesn't make too much of it. He says it's interchangeable. The word greater sometimes means a klipa, sometimes it could mean less than a klipa. It doesn't really matter that much. Okay, the question, however, is why remove a greater? We're talking about sakin, okay, but we're talking about something which is not chorif. We're talking about cold. Any time that you have cold, we were told it's hadacha, right? We learned about it in Siman Tzadik Aleph. You recall? All about hadacha. Sometimes hadacha is required when they touch. It's cold, right? You shouldn't put basar and challah next to each other because you may forget to do the hadacha. He says, yeah, unless you do something.
Hadacha was wiping it off.
Yeah, just rinsing it out. Rinsing it out.
So hadacha is rinsing. So what was wiping off? Kinuach.
Yeah. So why not just wash it? Why not rinse out? Put it under the faucet. This cucumbers, just rinse it out with water. Why do you have to rub it off? Why greater? Greater is obviously more than hadacha. Hadacha is less than a greater. And we said hadacha is quite common. The method to remove any leftovers that may still be there on the surface because it's cold. So why not do hadacha? So we have here machlekes rishonim actually on this. The Rashba and the Ran explain here that kishut or kishuim, cucumbers, are actually moist. And because they're moist, and there may be shamnunis here, which is one of the concerns, then hadacha is not sufficient. They are moist. The hadacha will not remove the shamnunis that has stuck to it. And on the contrary, because it's moist, it sticks to it even more. The shamnunis. So hadacha in it by itself will not be sufficient. That's the Rashba and the Ran. The Sefer Trumos, the Mordechai, the Isa Beheter, they say that cucumbers have a little bit of charifus. That's the reason why, in the case of the Gemara, it says, go ahead and rub off a little bit. If it would not be cucumbers, perhaps hadacha would be fine. So that's the way the Mordechai and the Sefer Truma, the Isa Beheter, they explain the pshat that cucumbers is just a little bit charif. Because of the little bit of charifus, you need greater. Comes along the Pri Megadim and says, there could be an nafkamina between these two shitas, these two explanations. What happens if you have a completely clean knife that has no shamnunis on it? According to the Rashba, there shouldn't be any reason to do any greater. He's concerned is that some of the shamnunis might be sticky. But if there's no shamnunis, greater. In other words, even according to the Rashba, I'm saying, according to the Rashba who holds greater is because of the shamnunis here that sticks to the cucumber, that's why you need greater, not hadacha. If it would, the Pri Megadim says, if it would be a real clean knife, according to the Rashba, you wouldn't need anything, just hadacha, of course. But according to the other explanation, the Mordechai, the Isa Veheter, that it's a little bit sharp, then what difference does it make if the knife is clean? That's the Pri Megadim says that would be a nafkamina between the two. It depends on what explanation you give on the Gemara, right? If you're talking about really that the whole problem here is that there's something left over on the knife, shamnunis, okay, then I can understand that there is a problem according to the Rashba and the Rana. But if it's clean, you don't have that problem. But according to the other shittas, it has nothing to do with cleanliness. If it's
there's a whole new issue, because before we were just that one, charav.
Right.
And now we have with charav.
Yeah, but that's just one example.
No, I mean,
right.
If there's an example,
right.
then maybe there's a third category in the middle.
Tomatoes.
Yeah, that's what we're going to see right now. We're going to see what about everything else. So it could be that, I mean, if you learn like the Rashba, the Ran, then it makes no difference really what you're cutting, right? Almost. Anything that's not sharp, sweet, but you have a knife that may have shamunis on it, you're going to have to do grater, correct?
But according to
the other ones,
is it that it's a little bit charav, or is it because it's...
No, because it's a little charav, they say. A little charav. So according to them, if you were to cut other things that are not charav at all, if you can find something that is not charav at all, like carrots, and somebody brings and mentions that, there shouldn't be any problem. You wouldn't even need grater. Because according to Rashba says, I mean, the kishus doesn't bring out any belias. That's not the problem. The problem is the shamnunis. But those who hold it's a little charf, it means that it's being maflit. It's extracting some of the belias in the sakin. All right. Since the Shulchan Aruch did not say how he holds, in other words, what kind of a knife we're talking about, so he must hold like he did in Sif Aleph, that even if the knife is mekunach, like the Sefer Trumas, you would still need grater. That's what he says here. You need grater. You must hold like that. In other words, he's not talking about a particular sakin that is not mekunach. He didn't say. So most probably it's like Sif Aleph, that even if the sakin is clean, you still need grater. Why? Because maybe a little bit of harifas. All right. That's what the Mechaber holds. But the Pri Megadim does add one more detail, that if the sakin would be Einer Ben Yoimo, you can be Mekel on something which is not very chorif. Something which is not so chorif, and it's an Einer Ben Yoimo, you don't have to worry about it. You don't need anything. In other words, lo machlil l'shvach. Hadacha. Yeah, hadacha we're going to soon see that it's at the very least you do need. Let's see, the Rashba explains it, talks about that. Right. And that the chayr, yeah, you're right. Yeah. Now, what would you say to the following? Somebody wants to not do hadacha, not do greda. He wants to do ne'itza bekarka.
Puts it in the ground.
Not the cucumber. The sakin. He wants to, in other words, he doesn't want to eventually do greda or whatever it is. He says, I have here a sakin. I want to kasher it for cutting the vegetables here. Would the ne'itza bakarka be sufficient, or would you still need greda? Does ne'itza bakarka here, would that help me? That I will not need to do any greda or hadacha.
Ne'itza bakarka is good to tamunis, right?
Right.
It takes away the
So it depends on how you hold on. What ne'itza bakarka is good enough for. Very good. So some say, no, you can't do ne'itza bakarka here and get away with it, because it would only remove shamnunis on the surface of the knife. But some say, no. We see that ne'itza bakarka is good even for the blias. Mm-hmm. When you're using it with cold, of course, ne'itza bakarka would be sufficient even for that. Because the ne'itza bakarka appears to be better than greda. I mean, you're actually doing something to the knife. So I saw that a lot of poskim marmati in ne'itza bakarka. If you actually take this knife that you use for flesh and you do ne'itza bakarka, you would not need any greda or any hadacha whatsoever. It will be sufficient. Madani HaShulchan doesn't like it. He explains that it wouldn't help. It wouldn't help with the blias. That is, it helps with shamnudas, like you said. So he depends how you hold on what ne'itza bakarka accomplishes. But we hold it accomplishes quite a bit with the blias too. So yeah, that's how we hold, I believe. I recall that it's, for certain things you can use it. So in here too, if you did it, most likely you, especially with kishut and all these things, they're not harifim anyway. It should be sufficient. All right, the Pischei Tshuva here talks about fish, which we've discussed in the past, because this is something that quite often happens in the supermarket. People want to buy kosher fish because it's in a big sale. Very important to keep in mind that it has to have scales. You have to identify that this is a kosher fish. It's not enough that it has a label, that it says salmon.
No, something that really kosher.
Yeah, also not. Yeah, exactly. I have heard and I have seen actually advertisements for restaurants that are kosher style.
Oh yeah.
And that's treif, taref completely.
Kosher style.
Yeah. So you have to be careful with that. So anyway, we spoke about nemonos. Nemonos is a big problem with goyim. He says you have to, with dogim you have to see the simonim. You're going to shecht an animal that you've never seen before, and it appears to you as kosher. You have to check out the simonim, right? You have to know if this is a kosher animal, this is a kosher fish, this is a kosher bird. Except that with birds, we are machmir that one requires, one needs to have a mesorah that the bird was eaten. That's mostly for birds. So others.
It's just the socializes with so we don't.
No. Today everybody socializes. Yeah. So even though you may be an expert, you see the simanim. It could be there are various exceptions. It could have one siman, not the other. It could have two and not the third. So by birds we're extra careful. Some are more machmir, use this chumrah of masorah even by animals, but not everybody goes along. That the turkey was a problem. Yeah. The turkey was a problem. When they came to this country, whoever saw turkey in Poland. So they found out that there were countries in Jewish communities who ate turkey because they relied on that. As long as there's one community that has a masorah, that's sufficient. Now, the Yemenites do eat locust, yeah. Certain kinds. So certain Moroccans. So that's not enough for masorah for us because they can eat it. But we have basically disallowed it.
Well, wait,
yeah. We did it for other birds too, not just for turkey.
And we rely on one community.
One or two, yeah.
So then why don't we rely upon the Yemenite side?
That's what I just said, yeah.
That doesn't make sense.
Because the Ashkenazi community basically said,
we don't eat it.
We don't eat it.
That's different, but logically there'd be no difference.
Yeah, you're right. There shouldn't be a difference. But this was more of a ruling that we don't have enough authority, enough experience to identify the simonim, and we're not so sure that the Yemenites do any better. So it's like a suffix. It's more of a suffix, whereas with birds, we see that it's a kosher bird based on the simonim, but we need a masorah too. You see what I mean? So it is kosher, and apparently it's kosher. But what's the saying in English? It walks like a chicken, walks like a duck, and quacks like a duck. It's kosher based on what we see, but we still need a masorah.
So, but what about the locust?
They had a masorah, right? They had a masorah of which ones? Or only the one or two types that they allowed. Not all, yeah. Yeah, so even they don't have the masorah of all the types that appear in the Torah, which are set. Right. Yeah. Research on that? And which ones? I guess maybe he wants to have some popcorn of, that's what they fry it and so all right. So the Pischei Tshuva here talks about fish. He brings down the Tshuva of a chayvas yoyer that if the goy cut the fish with his flesh, with his iser knife, minadin, you should need greater. Why? So he says because the fish is moist also. Right? And as the Rajva points out, anything that is moist should have the same din as cucumbers. And you should need greater. So the Chavos Yoyer is mechadash that by fish you don't need, according to him, you don't need a grater by fish. Why? Because he says the whole idea of grater is not le'ikuva. It's a very interesting, it's a chidush. It says the grater is not le'ikuva. It will not prevent you. It will not, how should we say le'ikuva in English? It will not be an obstacle here. It will not be a problem if you didn't take the grater. The grater, he says, is not le'ikuva. And plus, he says, sometimes you can't really do grater on a fish. He says it might be difficult to do grater. You're gonna ruin it. So therefore, he says, just do hadacha. Yad Yehuda is choylek on the Chavos Yoyer, and he says grater is le'ikuva. So in other words, that was a big chiddush. He says it's not le'ikuva. He says it is le'ikuva. But either way, we hold today that when you buy the fish, you can do either one. You can either slice off a little bit, rub it off, or rinse it out very well. Shif shuf. That should be sufficient. It's cold. It's not a davar chorif. So that's sufficient. When you buy fish, that will be sufficient. In other words, cutting it at the edges of where the knife cut. All right, the Mechaber continues on. and brings us a very interesting din here. This is, of course, the continuation of the Gemara. What happens if you cut a turnip? Now, I'm translating lefet, im chatach bo lefet, you cut a turnip. Afilu greido eno tzorich ela docho be'almo. Once you cut a lefet, several things happen. The lefet itself does not need grader for some reason. We'll see why. And not only that, you have two halachas here. The radish or anything else, not only radish, that you cut after you've cut the turnip, it's enough shori b'adocha. Why? Come on, lefet. The tam of turnip is so unique, so different. It has some quality in it. It actually neutralizes the tam that's coming out of the sakin. Okay. So anyway, first let's figure out what lefet is. I said it's a turnip. That's what in Hebrew today it's called. Now, the German language has a problem with this. You hear, Ilan?
I'm listening.
Yeah.
There's a lot of problems.
Yeah.
All of them are solved.
Because as far as I remember, I don't know. Maybe you know better. In German, there's no difference between the word beet and turnip.
Because I'm not good with vegetables. I don't even know what the turnip is in English.
Rieben.
I mean, I know they're two different words.
Do you know how they're
called?
called?
Beet or a turnip, I wouldn't
In
know
English,
what
yeah.
the difference is.
But they're so different. Do you know? Is there another name for it?
I have no idea what
it's called Rieben.
Reuben?
Yeah.
Reuben are the word Reuben
Reuben, yeah.
is what do you call it? Is
A turnip or a beet. Yeah. Maybe you can find out for me. But they're so different. How could they have the same name? I mean, radishes is completely different. Reitisch, right?
Yeah.
Remember that one?
Mm-hmm. That's the same
That's
like
a
in Yiddish.
Reitich. Yeah, exactly.
Same word.
In Yiddish, actually, there's 3 words for turnips. Anyway, but so now why am I telling you this? Because if you look at the Shach, what's left according to him? Riben. In Yiddish, or in German, yeah, that's one way in Yiddish. Depending in Yiddish, depends which country you come from. The Polish, I think, would call it either Riben or Burishkes.
That would sound to me more Russian. I think it might be.
Yeah, no, it's not in Russian. It's not a Russian word. In this case, it's not Russian. You're right about chrein. Chrein is a Russian word. Yeah. But, yeah, so he uses the word riben. Riben is turnips. The problem is that I saw somebody, v'chenu b'maril, he brings down the maril, also holds like that. I saw actually somebody bring down that he holds that lefet is roite riben or burikes. Now, burikes is a Polish word for beets, which is what the Yiddish word for beets are. You know, the red beets. Burikes. It can't be. We have a problem with that. Because we've already learned that selek, or beets, as the Rashba explains, has something in it that it's almost like a davar charef. Snono silka. Sif aleph. Radish or silka. And we learned that silka, or tradin, as the Shach brings down, which is a lashon in the Gemara, also teret tardin. That's, from what I recall, a beet. So beets, even though they don't appear to us as sharp, there's something in it. Either it's so sour, or it's some ingredient that actually is able to draw a little bit of the time. So that's where the Machaber brings down those two as being equal, the same. It's known as silka. But so why? I don't know why that Poisek, that Achron, says that lefet would be that, because I don't know. We don't hold like that anyway. We hold that lefet is a turnip. So turnip has this unique quality that it is able to neutralize the tam. So this is gewaldic, this is good. Mechaber is telling us, listen, you have a fleishik knife, you cut a turnip with it, and the Gemara says that, of course. He's quoting the Gemara. After you cut that turnip, not only is the turnip doesn't need greda, it only needs adacha because of the qualities of turnip. After cutting one turnip, you can go ahead and cut a radish and eat that with melichas, without anything. Just with adacha. Yeah. Adacha will be sufficient. Now, what's pshat that you need adacha? Because if you look at the Gemara and look at Rashi, the lashon over there is by kishuim, by lefet, is that it says shori, it's mutter. So for the word shari mutar, I would think you don't need hadacha at all. It says shari, it's mutar. If you cut a lefet, it's okay. Maybe you don't need hadacha, but on that the Rashba I saw says that anything that involves soinen, you need at the very least hadacha. You can't just do nothing. So the Ramah says here, v'dafka lefes shetamo meshuneh. All right, I can understand that the Gemara tells us that if you cut a turnip, it neutralizes the tam, and after that, whatever you cut has no more blias. But that's only lefet, only a turnip. Aval yerek or lechem. Let's say you cut a piece of bread. Let's say you cut a potato with that knife. That cutting of the potato or cutting of the bread does not mean that afterwards you can cut it snon. That knife is still a fleishiket knife with blias. The cutting of the bread, the cutting of a potato with a fleishiket knife does nothing for the blias. Only lefet does. And the Ramah adds, "V'filu belefes ein lehati lachnos snon rak pam achas." Now you want to cut a radish now, just one. You want to cut another radish, cut another lefes. You want to be mevatel the tam, the blia there, one lefet per radish. In other words, just because you used lefes one time does not mean that from now on all the radishes, davar chorev, that you can cut, you can eat with milacheks. It's not an automatic hagala.
You need another slice.
Another slice. Yeah, another cutting. There's something in the lefet that neutralizes the time, but only one at a time. Now this is not just a Ramah. The Ramah brings it from the Beis Yosef, B'Shem the Smag. That's what, in other words, we're of course makel on the lefet, because that's what the Gemara says, but it's not understood so clearly that the lefet just cancels out from now on all the blias in the sacking, that you can just go ahead and use it without anything. So at least for this snon, it helps you. It helps the lefes itself, that the lefet does not need greda, because it's a sweet vegetable. Plus it helps you that after cutting the lefet, you can go ahead and cut even a tznon with just hadacha. As far as lefet itself, if you look at the Rambam, from the Rambam it's mashma, it's not just lefet. Even though we said that from the Ramah, that it's only lefet has the Rambam, somehow if you look at the Lashon, it says that anything that you cut, not only a lefet, you can cut its tznon later too. If you read the Torah, obviously you'll get the other understanding that it's dafka lefes, the tamam meshuna. Why would there be such a machlokes? It's possible that if there is such a machlokes of is it only lefet or is it other vegetables too, it could be because one is more concerned with the shanunis and one is concerned with the blias. The Rambam is only concerned with shanunis. If he's only concerned with the shanunis, and obviously anything that you cut, a potato, would have the same effect of removing the shanunis. But if you're concerned with blias, if that's the general concern, then of course lefes is something unique that only lefes can take out the blias, or I should say neutralize the blias. But the Rambam may hold like those shitas that are concerned with the shanunis. And if you're concerned with shanunis, then what difference should it make? If you're cutting a lefet or you're cutting a potato, you're cutting something in between. So you're basically removing with that cutting the whatever's on the surface. Chochmas Odom here on the Mechaber says that what the Mechaber wrote, that by lefes all you need is hadocha, the Chochmas Odom brings down halacha l'maaseh that it's not only lefes that requires hadocha, even though lefes is unique, that after you cut the lefes, you can cut its tznon even. Chochmas Odom says yes, but as far as the hadocha could also be done to a carrot. In other words, kishuim, cucumbers, are the ones that need greda. For either one of the two reasons that we said, the Rashba because it has the moisture, or the other shitas because it's charif tzas. But the Chochmas Odom says, as far as hadacha, you wouldn't need greda by other vegetables either. So, for example, something that is sweet like carrots, and anything else similar to it. Interesting machlokes that I saw between the Pri Megadim and the Aruch HaShulchan, however, about davar asur. Here we're talking about you cutting cucumbers with sakin shel basar. So you cut a lefet, you cut a kishuim, you need grado, you need hadacha. But the Pri Megadim brings down that if you cut a tznon, he brings it down b'shem the Torah's chatas. If you're using an Isser knife and you want to cut its tznon, the lefet would not help you. At least he says you have to be machmor. Don't use an Isser knife to cut a lefet, so then you can then cut its tznon. You follow me? Mm-hmm. No, this whole creative idea of using a lefet, or if you did use a lefet, that you can cut its tznon, is only by basar, for example, but not by isur. By isur, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't be mekel, he says. The Aruch HaShulchan is choylek on this. The Aruch HaShulchan says, what difference should it make? If lefet works, it works. But what's interesting, or what's not so clear, what's not so clear is if all this is a din in lechatchilo or is a din b'di'evet. The Shach seems to be saying that this whole din of cutting a lefet before cutting it's known as a din b'di'evet.
What is it? Once you already cut the...
Once you already cut the lefet.
The lefet?
Yeah. We're talking about lefet here. Shechotach achar ha-lefet, known, right? So the Shach says, Lichor mashma miloshen zeh de lechatchila aser.
You're not allowed
to cut its snon. You want to use right now its snon in your Melicha food. All right? Can you just cut a lefet first and then use this snon with Melichas? What? You want to, right? So let's say you want to use radishes now in your Melicha dish. Can you go ahead and use a lefet, take out a turnip from your pantry, cut the turnip, and now go ahead and cut radishes with it?
Because there's enough of the way to understand the b'di'evet. In other words,
right.
you cut the lefet with a knife. Okay.
Yeah.
Now it's still a lechatchila.
Right.
When you're going to cut now the tznon, and you mean to use the tznon with milk, then it's lechatchila.
Right.
Once you already cut the tznon,
right. So
lechatchila is before you cut the lefet.
Yeah. The Shach is going in the lashon of the Mechaber. The Mechaber says, "Velo oid el afilu tznon shechotach achar lefet." What does that mean? Shorib dehadocha. So he says, "Shechotach achar lefet." Mashma, if you cut the tznon, mashma. The lechatchila aser. You can't just take a lefet lachtoch bot tznon leochlo in basar. Afapisha kvar chotach bo lefet.
You can't just take it and cut.
He says it's mashma like that. Yeah, it's a din b'di'evet.
B'di'evet again. B'di'evet after you already cut the tznon. Now, before I cut the lefet, to have the intent to use that knife to cut the tchila.
No, that we know for sure it's possible. Once you've already cut the lefet, you can cut its tznon.
So
that's what Mechaber says that.
Well, but the Shach is saying this din is a b'di'evet, not so Mechaber.
Well, actually, maybe you're right. 1 second. He said the Mechaber says that afilu tznon shechotach achar lefet shori behadocha.
So that would be now you already cut it.
You already cut its
tznon.
tznon.
You can't reverse it, and you already cut it.
If you just cut the lefet, can you cut its tznon?
So that would be lechatchila. Could be. I'm not saying it is. I don't know how to read the Shach here. Just saying both possibilities are open. The lechatchila could be before you cut the lefet or cut the tznon.
Yeah.
The b'di'evet would be either after you cut lefet.
Yeah, because you're right. Because you're right. The Shach is more focused on not lechatchila even before cutting the lefet, but lechor mashma miloshen lechatchila also lachtoch bot tznon lechatchila. In other words, you already cut the lefet.
Now, can you lechatchila cut the tznon?
Yeah, because you know what? The other way around. Why would somebody do that? Well, you can still think of it because you don't want to do. Maybe you don't want to take off a netila.
Right. You want to be super smart, but.
Yeah. The Chor, so he says, "Mechor mashma lo shezeh lechatchila asu lachtoch bo tznon lechlo im basar." Afa pi shekvar chotach bo lefes. Ava Marshal, he brings down the Marshal. Ubesidu sham choylek ala isa be'ete umatir afilu lechatchila. The Marshal holds that you can do that lechatchila. You can go ahead and cut it lechatchila. V'ocham mashma meloshim b'yisyesh shekosol arashbo. De lo matik shechotach lefes ela lesilka. But others are matir behed yulachach afilu tznoin. Bemis mashma kim beloshim sefer trumas v'tur v'duruk v'chin kosav ha'agudo. Okay, this is another thing. Don't say, he says, that even though it's knowing my need hadacha, maybe you will forget and you'll eat it with basar without hadacha, like we said it before in Sabri Kalef. Things that need hadacha, you may forget and not do the hadacha, so don't do it lechatchila. Over there, you'll need hadacha right away after you put it in the kara. You can eat it raw. You may not have to wash it. Here, hadacha is a chumrah be'alma, because the tam was already nisbatal in the lefes. Okay, but here, I'm sorry, he does say like you, towards the end of miuvadai lachtoch lechatchila lefes, kedi lachtoch boy achakach tznon, mashma b'shasu poiskin doasu. So he does say that towards the end.
Okay.
Yeah. So the lechatchila is, like you said,
After
you've already cut this, the lefet, can you now lechatchila cut a snon, or is it only a din of b'di'eved? He already cut its snon after he cut a lefet. He doesn't need grader, he only needs hadacha. But to actually go ahead and cut, and to use the lefet, in other words, to get away with it, it appears that would not be mutter. Even though, if lefet really has that kind of attribute, that it could accomplish to be neutralized, why not do it? You know, you want to save the kedei netila. I mean, not that netila is so much, but the question is, yeah. And the thing is, you know, people may make the mistake. I mean, it's not a real lechatchila method to do it, especially if you're going to be cutting many radishes. And we said before, you're going to have to cut one lefet between every radish. I'm not so. I mean, even though the Shach says that it's not so partial because of what the Beis Yosef brings down, that having to cut a lefet between every tznon. Remember, we said before that you would have to cut a lefet between every tznon to allow. In order to do that, it's obviously you are aware that you're about to do that. So you take the knife and you cut it. You cut the lefet. You cut it tznon. You take your knife and you cut a lefet again. So somehow it could be that would be mutar lechatchila. But the Shach says that we hold that it's also to do that lechatchila. Unless you already cut the lefet, then you can go ahead and cut it tznon and just do a hadacha, and that would be sufficient.
Slice of stone, or one slice for a whole stone, no matter how many.
Stone? What is that?
The radish.
No, so that's what the Ramah says, that you would need to cut a lefet every time.
Another slice into the radish, or for a whole radish?
No, I guess. I mean, radishes are usually small, so every time you... Yeah.
Because you can slice them thin to salads.
Yeah.
When you go down, that's the question.
Yeah, well, every time you would want to cut it snon, you would have to either have cut already a lefet, or if it's possible, you would need to put your knife into a lefet. The lefet is bigger than its snon. So you may be able to cut it, then cut it again, cut the same one. Yeah.
We are not worried about the differential in size and the turnip?
The differential?
You have a big knife and a small turnip. You're saying it draws out the...
Yeah, because you're cutting it through. Yeah. Well, assuming you always use the same part of the knife with cutting everything else. If you have a very large knife, that may be different because you may not use that part of the knife, and here you may end up using it for something else that is bigger, and obviously then you would have a different kind of situation. Yeah.
The turnip is a kol rübe.
Oh, for sure?
Yeah.
So that would be the correct way of calling it.
Yeah.
Have you heard of that?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah, sure.
Not just rübe by itself.
No.
And the beet would just be rübe. Yeah? The rute, yeah. You're right. Yeah.
Two different words.
To distinguish between the two. Yeah. Anyway, the Gemara clearly explains that lefet, the reason that lefet doesn't have a din chorev is because it's sweet. And because of that, we understand that anything else that has the same qualities of a lefet, as the Chochmas Sodom brought down with carrots and other vegetables, would have the same halacha. Which means that if you were to cut with that knife a carrot or a potato, and you want to make you want to use those vegetables with milchiks, it would be sufficient to take off a grader. To take off a hadacha, to do a hadacha. You wouldn't even need grader. Okay, grader was only required by kishuim, as either Rashba explained or as the others explained. The makom achtach, the place where you cut it. Right? So, for that, I mean, we mentioned before the Rif, that the Rif says, don't think only lefes was shari badocha, even avatiach, something sweet like watermelon. It does not mean that the avatiach has the same qualities as the lefet as far as neutralizing the tam. Lefet serves two examples. Lefet serves as an example as a sweet vegetable, which means you don't need Gereda even. All you need is Hadacha, which is less. Plus, Lefet is unique that if you happen to have cut, as we said before, a Lefet, you can now cut its snor. And according to the Marshal, that's a Lechatchila din too. The Shach says it's only B'di'evet. But according to the Marshal, if you already cut a Lefet, you can cut now its snor. But at least it's only one. All right. Yeah. I never heard of that. Well, maybe there's several dictionaries in several regions that call it different things. Yeah. Tzorech on that.
No, because I was very surprised.
Yeah, you have to consult.
I'm familiar.
Yeah?
Sure.
Not with Rübe.
With Rübe as well.
Yeah.
Just not from the vegetables behind.
Maybe in Bavaria they call it something else even.
Well, that's quite likely.
Yeah.
Depending which part of it.
Yeah. Anyway, so very, very important halacha that the people should know that in cutting vegetables that are sweet, even though they're sweet, you still need hadacha. As the Rajma pointed out, that the hadacha is the bare minimum when using tzoinen. Therefore, just use a melicha knife if you're going to be cooking these vegetables in melichiks. Don't use the fleshik knife. Use a parv knife. Use a melicha knife. Don't use. Otherwise, you have to rinse it out. You have to do something to it. And even though we said it may not be so much of a ikuva, because the hadacha for sure is not going to be ikuva. Grade is different. But hadacha would not be, if you went ahead and did it without hadacha, it's still okay. You can be soymech on the many other tzirufin that we said about not by not and the like, that it would not be a problem even though it's a sakin. But if it's something sweet when you for sure know that there's nothing sharp about it, hadacha will be sufficient. But lechatchila, I tell everybody, just use a milchik knife, use a parva knife. Don't go ahead, but this is nothing, right? It's cold, it's a knife. What is it going to do? Bread, perhaps. You can cut bread. You don't have another knife. You want to cut a piece of bread. Okay. Then just make sure the knife is clean. But if you're going to be eating really, even bread, you're going to be putting cream cheese on it, I wouldn't use a fleshik knife. Just harchakas. We make harchakas. We spoke about harchakas. Even with salt shakers. You don't want it to get stuck. You don't want it the same salt to touch this, to touch that. So these are harchakas. But me'ikar adin, there is no problem because it's all tzoinen. And with vegetables, obviously the ducha, the sakina is something. It is something, and especially if it's not clean, if there's shamunis. So therefore, hadacha is required here. Like the Rashab says, that's the very least. If you did it, rinse it out, and then go ahead and use it. Then no problem. You can do it lechatchila. If you have separate knives, that's even better. You don't have to worry about it. Okay, so we're done with Siman Tzadik Vov. Next week we'll go on to Siman Tzadik Zayin.